Miatta, great to have you on the show. Long time no speak. What do you think about the tone of that press conference?
There was definitely a bit of kind of wagging finger. I mean, look, in the end, we are in a lockdown, and it might not be the best policy instrument, but it's the policy instrument that we have. It's the one thing that we know gets the rate of infection down, granted temporarily, but until a vaccine is rolled out, it's probably our only strategy. And we know that people shouldn't be having parties. So if they are, I think it's absolutely wrong. What I think is more interesting is, how much of non-compliance is being driven by these really extreme cases of people having massive parties with 150 people, which can't be happening that much, versus people trying to get on with their day-to-day lives, people who can't stay at home, who can't self-isolate because they have to work, and also just people having fatigue or being confused by the rules. And that wasn't clear. And I think there's probably quite a lot of that, which is sitting behind that. And that's one of the functions of having multiple lockdowns. People get tired, they get confused, the rules keep changing, and some people just can't afford to do this. And I think there's a little bit of kind of dishonesty in the way that it's being framed, because unless you sort of look at the full thing, of course you're going to do fines, but you're not doing some of the other things, potentially, providing people with sufficient support so they can stay at home, for example, in order to tackle the problem in the round.
Indeed so. And what's your reaction to Calvin's point there that maybe we need to sort of actually have a look at the efficacy or otherwise of these lockdowns, Miatta?
So I think he's right insofar as no one in their right minds wants a lockdown. It's a really messy, blunt instrument because it does something that has huge other negative consequences. I think the difficulty that we have is that nothing else we're clear works. We know that when we lock down the economy, the rate of infection goes down. It's only a temporary solution, but that's okay at the moment because we have the vaccination rollout. And as long as they can roll out the vaccines quick enough, this is a strategy, however flawed, is probably the only strategy that we have.
Some suggestion that cases were coming down actually before all three lockdowns in some regions. And actually, this is a big scientific experiment and at the expense of people's lives and indeed livelihoods.
Indeed.
I don't think so. I don't think any government would do this lightly. I think everyone is very, very acutely aware of the wider cost to the economy, to people's mental health, to our social fabric. I don't think you do this lightly. I think they think it's the only option that they have. And given that we are in a pandemic that's, not a year long, given that we don't actually know that much about the virus, it's not like we have multiple other solutions other than trying to suppress this thing and getting the vaccine rolling out as quickly as we possibly can.
Calvin, are people who question lockdowns dangerous and wrong?
This is the problem, isn't it? No one's arguing about lockdowns anymore or the efficacy. They're not saying that, they're not providing any evidence to show that they work. They're arguing against people that are arguing against lockdowns. So lockdown skeptic is now a bad word. To be skeptical about something that impedes your civil liberties is now toxic.
Immediately sort of prejudge it before it comes out, but I think there will be huge pressure to somehow prove that this was the right thing to do.
Exactly. I think the reason we're in lockdown now, the reason we've had pretty much lockdown consistently, all the tier 3 and 4 were lockdown essentially. The reason is because they're doubling down. They made this decision in March, some would say too late, to lock down the nation. We have no proof that it works, but it's the only thing they have at their in their tool set, so they have to be seen to be doing something, and now they're going to keep doing it because that is the only action they have available to them. It's not because it works, it's because that's the only thing they know what to do.
Well, to be fair, the science is very clear insofar as this is a virus that's transmitted by interaction and social interaction with people. So if you stop social interaction, however unpleasant and however big the side effects, it stops the transmission of the virus. That we do know. Now, there is a question
how's that going, Miatta? I mean, we've seen circuit breaker lockdowns, fire break lockdowns. If anything, at best, it often just delays the inevitable rise in cases. And also, we are locked down, and then once a day, we go for a walk in a crowded park and we go to Tesco.
Well, I think that's a fair point. I think it's a fair point. I think, as I said, it's a blunt instrument. It works temporarily. That's the thing that we've learned over the last year, that unless you maintain the restrictions, the virus bounced back again,
well,
which
the
is
problem
why
is,
it was
does it
so...
work? Miatta, I don't want to interrupt you because we love having you on the show, but does it work? You know, there's another argument to say this is a seasonal virus. It goes up in the winter and down in the summer. We have Boris Johnson patronising the country in late spring, saying, well done, everyone, jolly good show. Because of everyone's hard work, brackets, bankruptcies and depression and broken marriages and ruined lives, we've got the curve down. It's like, no, countries that had a light touch like Sweden also saw the curve down. It goes up in the winter, down in the summer. The idea of somehow that we can really impact the rise of this virus and the spread of it is for the birds.
Well, so I think there is definitely a question around the veracity of the virus based on seasons. I don't know, the science isn't completely clear about that, but there seems to be a trend. But, you know, we do know that when we stop social interaction, we also stop transmission. I will give you that we don't stop transition permanently, and that is part of the problem, which is why it was only ever going to be half of the solution. The other part of the solution, which, to be fair to the scientists, to be fair to the politicians, they have done a pretty good job, was trying to come up with a vaccine and roll a vaccine out. That was always going to be our get out of jail card with this. I can't imagine what the alternative of not having these lockdowns, as awful as they have been.
Well, Miatta, I agree. Now, listen, I really appreciate, Miatta, I really appreciate your measured tone. And it's so nice to speak to a voice of the left that's just calm and going through all the different arguments, being reasonable, because as I said at the beginning of the show, no one's got a monopoly on empathy or on the truth or on the science. And that's really should be the tone of this conversation. I credit you for that. Wonder, though, if it's a slam dunk argument that whatever you think of lockdowns and the tiered restrictions, God forbid if there were another pandemic in the future or multiple pandemics, we can't do this again, can we? We can't shut down a country for a year and borrow £500 billion.
No. And I think, you know, one of the big lessons for us will have to be learning from this, thinking about the preventative action we can take, thinking about how quickly we can respond to avoid ever having to play this out again. There will be other pandemics. We know that there will be other pandemics. So it's a lesson that we learn and how we prepare for them and find a better, more nuanced policy solution than lockdowns to get us through them, that I think will be the real challenge and the test going forward.
Miatta, what do you think about this?
Well, look, so I looked up woke, and the technical definition of woke is caring about social justice and racial justice. So I think we should, quite frankly, all be wokes, if you ask me. You know, he is obviously progressive and he is liberal. You know, to Calvin's point about the number of executive orders, I think we had a president in Donald Trump that was, you know, not just divisive, but that I would question his capacity to govern and the decisions that he was making. So quite frankly, I think there were probably things like re-entering the Paris Accord, you know, rejoining the WHO that quite frankly needed to be done. So he is trying to set a direction of travel. He's trying to say that this is a break from the other guy. And I think it's right and it's within his prerogative. And I think for most people across the world, we all breathe the sigh of relief, because I hope this is a return to a slightly more compassionate, thoughtful, internationalist American White House and presidency. You know, I've consistently said I don't think Joe Biden can be triumphalist, because I think there are big issues that he needs to confront, and he needs to confront the fact that there's 74 million people in the US that don't believe in the old, you know, liberal traditional politics and want something else. And he's got to find a way to appeal and speak to them. But caring about social justice, caring about racial justice, yes, please, more of that.